Hello, Gamecock fans. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. Welcome to Ball Don't Lie, SGTV's premier live sports show.
JP and I will be giving you our weekly insight every Sunday.
This week on the show, a fairly uneventful week of college football across the board.
But later, Gamecock soccer, the MLB World Series, and the NBA season thus far.
Be sure to also stick around for head-to-head pick'ems.
And without further ado, welcome to Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome to the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry.
This is the one where there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer.
I'm always the get-back game guy.
There's so many teams with so many good wins.
Because, they love seeing Clemson lose no matter what.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that love seeing Clemson lose.
Yeah,
Return of the King released 20 years ago today. There you go. And for that reason, give me the Noles.
I like being right more than I like being happy.
I think the committee made the right choice.
Florida State did not lose a football game. It's football. This is college football. How can you not be romantic about baseball? It's just such a tremendous sport.
It's time. Is it time?
I think it's time.
This is Ball Don't Lie.
And here's some of the results from an underwhelming Week 9 of college football. And JP, me and you were together watching the noon slate and the 3:30 slate.
It sucked.
And we opted for Black Ops 6 instead.
We did play the new Call of Duty a lot yesterday. But yeah, probably the best game of the weekend was number 17 Boise State on Friday night, escaping UNLV in Vegas by a score of 29-24. Ashton Jean team had maybe his quote-unquote worst game of the season, but he still had over 130 yards.
And they were loading the box with 8 or 9 guys every time, and over 100 of those yards were after contact.
He's unreal.
He's still just putting on a show. We watched Notre Dame just dismantle Navy. Navy just really dismantled themselves, I would say. Notre Dame did what they had to and just won the game, but Navy was just giving it to them with a bow on top.
Yeah, and for Notre Dame, you literally just, it was very emblematic, like, they're Notre Dame, but they're Navy. When Jeremiah Love and guys like Jaden Greathouse just got out in space and just were off to the races, there was nothing Navy could do about it. Number 1, Oregon destroyed number 20, Illinois, 38-9. Luke Altmaier just had a pathetic day. And wearing black helmets, yellow jerseys, and black pants, Oregon looked very odd, but they were electric.
They were, and Oregon again proves why they're the number 1 team in the country. A good win against Illinois, who showed up as a better team than I think most expected to start the year. But Luke Altmaier against good defenses has struggled not only this year, but in the past. He proved to do more of the same in this one. I think we should mention that the night slate of games was pretty good.
It was better. It was definitely better.
It was on par with the rest of the year.
Number 3, Penn State, dealing with the injury to Drew Aller and escaping Camp Randall with a 28-13 victory where they kind of pulled it away at the end. Wisconsin was playing a lot better than they were at the start of the year, but they're still very offensively challenged. 2 good
defenses on the field for sure.
And then maybe the other best game of the day, number 22 SMU, beating Duke in overtime in Durham, 28-27. Duke with a shot at the 2-point conversion to win it, but they came up just short. Maybe it was defensive pass interference. I don't know. But SMU gets a win before a big matchup this week, which we'll talk about later. And then finally, the most important game of the day happened in College Station, Spencer.
Absolutely. The 3rd biggest crowd ever at Kyle Field. It was so loud the cameras were shaking for ESPN. Awesome atmosphere, and A&M ended up surging back and taking the lead over LSU, who at one point in the game looked like they were
on their way to winning it handily.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it would be running away with it, but it looked like it would be a comfortable win for the Tigers. Marcel Reed comes in for the Aggies, and LSU just forgot how to play defense. Garrett Nussmeier forgot what team he was throwing to, and, A&M ended up getting a little bit of a handy victory themselves.
Yeah, and that was a massive win for them because, there are some of the huge implications of Week 10, and kind of moving on from that next week should hopefully be a lot more exciting, although it's not exactly a much better on paper slate. There are still some great matchups, and let's take a look at some of the more anticipated matchups of Week 10. Spencer, we'll start off with that noon slate. Miami continues their just bout versus unranked squads against Duke at noon on ABC.
And, I think if Duke was able to get the win over SMU, they probably would have found themselves ranked. Again, fell short, and because they had that field goal blocked at the end of regulation, might have been in Manny Diaz's head to go for 2, go for the
Oh,
win.
Polina was horrible.
He
on
was
Saturday.
not good, and SMU had just blocked one at the end of regulation. But, I mean, really, Duke probably should have won that football game. Not a great 2-point play call design, I didn't think, in the throw. Going back to your point, I don't think it was close enough to the receiver for it to be called pass interference. But either way, this one's shaping up to be good at noon on ABC. Moving on, the noon game on ESPN, it's Arkansas versus Ole Miss. This one is a football game.
Yeah, it is. Arkansas allegedly played Mississippi State yesterday, and you'd have to put me under threat of like total annihilation to make me watch that game. And I didn't. But Ole Miss did not look great against Oklahoma in a game that I also didn't want to watch.
The most unwatchable football game ever.
Oh my God,
it was
that
horrible.
was awful. And so it was very interesting there. Taylon Green is a random number generator at quarterback. So we'll kind of see what he can do there.
It's either good or very bad.
Yeah,
so.
but we're not exactly leaving the noon slate just yet, as you can see up there. We also have Syracuse versus Virginia Tech on the CW. 2 teams in the ACC that are improving, although Syracuse just had a disastrous game against
I think Virginia
Pitt.
Tech's on the up and up. Syracuse looked to be on that way before the Pitt game, and Kyle McCord with one of maybe the all-time disaster classes ever put on TV.
Well, he did throw 3 touchdown passes to Pitt.
Yeah,
but Virginia Tech looking a lot more like the team we kind of thought they'd be in the preseason. Still with a nice inside track to 8 or 9 wins on the season, with a big home game against Clemson coming up. Syracuse has the Tigers at home, I believe, as well. We'll see who can kind of win this battle in the middle class of the ACC. Meanwhile, the defending national champion Michigan Wolverines, coming off of a rivalry weekend win against Sparty, will take on #1 Oregon in the Big House, 3:30 on CBS. Spencer, this one maybe looked like it was going to be a lot better preseason than it is right now.
I think you're absolutely right. Again, Michigan's quarterback struggles reign supreme, but they have a really good defense. The Big House, a tough environment. I think this one might be a little bit more challenging for the Ducks than people might expect, but I still think it could turn out to be a fun game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's a tough place. It's Oregon's first big road test of the season, so we'll see how they handle that. Then, kind of sticking that 3:30 window, a big rivalry showdown in the SEC as the world's largest outdoor cocktail party will be going on in Jacksonville as the University of Georgia will take on the Florida Gators. Florida, a team people were really down on this year, but they got a nice blowout win against Kentucky before a bye week last week. Both teams getting a bye before their big-time rivalry showdown. Georgia and Florida both coming off of nice performances. Of course, Georgia's was a lot bigger, beating Texas. But Florida beating up on Kentucky. Kentucky falling on some hard times.
Yeah, wheels maybe coming off the wagon there. But, I mean, this one, big trap game for Georgia. I don't know if you can call it that, but, Florida's not the team that they typically are in the SEC, and they haven't been in recent years. So this is one that Georgia, I think, has to really slam the door on. You want to, put yourself in that right now, second or third team in the SEC to Texas A&M, who's still, they moved to top of the SEC, handing LSU their first conference loss last night. So I think this one's always fun. It's always a lot of passion, a lot of rowdy fans, and it's going to be fun. And moving to our one highlighted night game that, we'll get into some more in a little bit, don't you worry, but it's Clemson versus Louisville. Clemson coming off a bye week. This is a big test for them because Louisville, I think, is maybe just outside the top 25. They've had a couple hard losses against SMU and Notre Dame, but they've been close against 2 teams that are in the top 25.
Yeah, it's funny, their losses, SMU, who's turned out to be pretty decent, Notre Dame and Miami, who are both in the top 10 now. If their defense can kind of, get it together, their offense is still good enough to win football games. We saw it when they came back on the road against Boston College on Friday night. Tyler Show and company really kind of kicked it into another gear, and they pulled off that heroic comeback up there at Chestnut Hill. So Clemson, it's their first real test against a decent opponent since the Georgia game. So we'll kind of see if they can, how they'll navigate that, but it should be a pretty soft matchup. But Spencer, Clemson was not the only team in South Carolina that was on a bye week on Saturday.
You're absolutely right. The Gamecocks will return to Williams-Brice Stadium with what might be the game of the week against the #1 team of the SEC, the Texas A&M Aggies. Although College Game Day isn't coming back to Columbia, JP, I think this is a huge marquee matchup for a South Carolina team This would be an absolute statement win against the now ranked number 10 Texas A&M Aggies. Again, South Carolina moved to 4-3 over a big win over Oklahoma on the road. Since we were on fall break last week, we didn't get to talk about it, but just dismantling the Sooners. And, you know, again, that Oklahoma offense still has not figured it out. But the South Carolina defense, you know, it proves itself time in and time out. 9 sacks, 2 picks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 defensive touchdowns. You know, this team is probably better whenever the offense isn't on the field.
Yeah, you know, it really, like, you know, they outscored the offense for the most part in that win against Oklahoma. And so, you know, it's really going to be just how much of a house of horrors can Williams-Brice be? A place where, you know, a top 10 team goes to die, you know, in recent years. But, you know, for South Carolina, this is just a huge game for kind of the outlook of the entire season, because this end-of-season schedule isn't looking as daunting as it previously was.
Absolutely.
You have A&M right now, but after that, you're facing off against a Mizzou team that's struggling heavily.
Vandy on the road.
Vandy on the road, who just lost to Texas. And then, you know,
the mighty Wofford Terriers.
Mighty Wofford Terriers. But if you beat Texas A&M, you're setting yourself up for a potentially huge top 25 showdown in Death Valley against Clemson. So for South Carolina, it really kind of feels like that 2022 season right now. Of course, that kind of really started with a big home night game win against Texas A&M, so we'll see if they can continue that.
Exactly. The only time South Carolina's ever beaten Texas A&M was a couple of years ago, right down the road at Williams-Brice. It was a night game. The Ferris wheel was all lit up in the background, and South Carolina just wreaked havoc. I mean, it was Connor Wegman again.
It started with Xavier Legette taking back the opening kickoff.
Sure did. That was awesome. He scored a touchdown today. I mean, he's having he had a great end to his career as a Gamecock. You know, hey, it was a huge moment. One of the coolest, I think, we've gotten to experience as students, and that place was absolutely rocking. And I think it's going to take a big play like that, a big play from the defense, to kind of knock A&M off their game a little bit. But it's going to be really interesting what they do at quarterback, because it's been flip-floppy all year long. But Marcel Reed is kind of establishing himself as the guy.
He is, and I think it's going to really come down to that, the front of South Carolina. Can they make him uncomfortable? This will be the toughest place he's ever played at. But, you know, we'll make our prediction on that at the end of the show.
We sure will.
But the actual game of the week belongs to the Big Ten, as the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to travel to Beaver Stadium to go toe-to-toe with number 3 Penn State, and another top 4 matchup in the Big Ten. Spencer, Ohio State has won 7 in a row in this series, and most of the time it hasn't been close. Penn State, can they finally buck the big game trend?
And I mean, that's the question. Again, we'll give you our picks on that at the end of the episode, as we always do. But, you know, I will say, to Penn State's credit, I think this is the best Penn State team we've seen in some time. You know, usually before the Ohio State game, it's Penn State playing a bunch of cupcakes, Ohio State playing a bunch of cupcakes before they play Penn State and Michigan. But, you know, they haven't managed to lose before this one, which is a good start. But I think it's all about, first off, if Drew Aller plays, how they can move the ball downfield. If you just try and run the ball down Ohio State's throat, it's going to be hard with that front 7. And, I mean, it's going to be a gritty game. Ohio State doesn't look their best.
No, their offensive line getting injured,
horrible.
Depth problems.
They can't run the ball against Nebraska, who gave up over 200 rushing yards the week before. So it's going to be a very interesting game, because I don't know what to expect from either team this week. Because really, you know, Ohio State looked amazing against Oregon, just came, you know, a couple plays short. Yeah. But then against Nebraska, you're lucky to leave with a victory. So I don't know.
It's going to be very interesting. Of course, if Penn State's defense can force some turnovers against this Ohio State team, give Drew Aller and company some short fields to work with, it'll definitely be a lot easier to foresee it. Interesting to see the juxtaposition between the environment being a big noon kickoff game as opposed to potentially a night game.
And first off, that's horrible. That's just sacrilegious to the game.
I like having big games early, but a showdown between Penn State and Ohio State needs the crowd jazzed like it is for a night game at Happy Valley.
And a night game at Happy Valley is, I don't think you can argue with it being top 5 in the sport. I think it has a pretty good claim to be number 1. I mean, when that place is rocking at night, the whiteout, it's historic, and big noon kickoff robs us of it. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, I
you
don't
know, you can move another game to noon. Not South Carolina though. I mean, you know, we have cool
No.
we have cool red lights now.
We have too many noon games.
You know, that's actually true. We actually have hot weather down here. So, you know, I don't know. I think it would be a lot more fun under the bright lights, but nonetheless, we're hoping for a good game. And another Pennsylvania team looks to remain undefeated as the Pitt Panthers travel to SMU for a top 20 ACC slugfest, JP.
Yeah.
The words don't exactly sound right, but that's what it is in these two teams. It's the first time they're meeting in high stakes in quite some time.
Yeah, you know, it's their first meeting in the ACC, obviously, with SMU joining the conference this year. It's their first meeting since 2012 when SMU was in the CUSA and Pitt was in the Big East. But, you know, for Pitt, it's their best start since 1982 when they started 7-0. And that year, they met SMU in the Cotton Bowl. It's been a long time since these two teams were meeting, you know, were actually kind of in the national conversation in the sport of college football. And they really have, to thank for it, young quarterbacks. For SMU, the sophomore quarterback, Kevin Jennings. And for Pitt, it's the freshman, Eli Holstein. Spencer, you know, I'm really excited. These two teams also have very good running backs.
They do. I mean, both of these teams have, you can talk about their offenses, you know, with Kevin Jennings being a really good dual threat quarterback, and I think that's just such a hard thing to deal with in college football. I think coordinators are still trying to figure it out. But Eli Holstein
he slings it, man.
The return of the pocket passer. It's super fun to watch him just get back there and sling it. It's a lot easier when you have your running back, Reed, back there. You could just always hand it off to. He's nearing 1,000 yards. But, you know, for Pitt, look at what their defense did to Syracuse. I mean,
Yeah.
they had Kyle McCord in some kind of chamber. It was horrible, whatever they were doing to him.
The big thing, I think, for Pitt is that you're going on the road to SMU. You got to take care of the football. They've been very good at this year, only 6 turnovers on the season. And the big thing, you know, for them is, one, to take care of the football, obviously, like I just said, but when they get into the red zone, they score touchdowns. And they're very good at that, but you have to be able to do that on the road. But for SMU, if you can get Pitt behind the chains, they're not a great third down team. And so, you know, also their defense outside of those like giant explosive plays, they're very good at wreaking havoc. But when they're not wreaking havoc, it's easy to kind of pick them apart. We've seen SMU do that to teams like Louisville, and when they played against BYU, even though they lost. So
A nail biter, by the
yeah.
way. That's BYU's probably closest game of the year.
It'll be interesting, I think, to see how they hold up against the aerial assault of Pitt.
And, you know, one thing you mentioned to me before the show, JP, how easy is SMU's road to potentially the ACC title game if they get past Pitt?
Yeah, they don't play Clemson. They don't play Miami. So it's going to be very interesting there. Meanwhile, for Pitt, if they beat SMU, that sets up a showdown with the Clemson Tigers on November 2nd in Pittsburgh, which could be for, you know...
Game day could be, you know,
I
circled
can't think
on
of a
that
time
one.
Pitt has ever hosted game day. I can think of one time they probably should have, and I don't know if they did, back when they
Kenny
hosted Brian
Pickett.
Kelly and the undefeated Cincinnati in 2009 for the Big East
Oh, God.
title.
That's you
There
know,
was snow at that
I was
game.
thinking of the last good Pitt team just a couple of years ago.
Oh, well,
when they
maybe,
when they were
who
fake
knows?
sliding everywhere.
But that's really going to kind of do it for our college football coverage right now. We've got even more sports for you guys coming up after this commercial.
And the Gamecock men's soccer team took a huge win over James Madison on Wednesday. Myself and JP were on the call for SGTV. It was beautiful. And JP, being at the game, this one feels really, really good. Can you tell us why?
Because James Madison tried to commit manslaughter on the pitch, man. You know, they scored a goal to draw it to 2-1 South Carolina. And Gabe Atienzo went to play the ball coming out of the net. And this blowhard for JMU,
And that's
for lack
putting
of a
it
better
in
term.
a PG way.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we get thrown out of this place.
he's
That's
been
all
playing
I'll say.
Very cheap all game long. And he goes up to Atienzo, you know, he runs
Could we
by
get the
him.
camera on us for this? Would you like a little
Yeah,
demonstration
we'll
of what
we'll
of what he
demonstrate
does
this.
here? He goes up behind Gabe Atienzo, you know, grabs him by the neck and just
Boom! I'm like, ah!
and I'm like,
And then he puts him in like a chokehold and like wrestles him down
to the ground.
The
And
ESPN Plus cameras didn't see it; they were too busy ogling over the James Madison goal celebration.
to be fair, that is customary. You know, you put the
Typically, you
camera
don't
on
see
the goal
murder
score.
attempted after goals.
But since they didn't have a replay, he was allowed to stay in the game. So we'll get.
But he did have a disaster class afterwards. He was slipping all over the place. He missed passes, bad touches. It was beautiful.
The crowd, the crowd erupted, and after that, it felt so sweet. Jonah Bagar, since JMU sent the entire squad forward, everybody, even the goalie was in front of the midfield line. Jonah Bagar intercepts a pass, gets all the way in, and just like in hockey, he had an empty netter. The bench swarmed him. The crowd erupted. JP, it was chills. It was a beautiful moment.
Shambles.
And it felt great because James Madison, not wasn't the first time they'd been chippy. South Carolina was the bigger team, didn't get called for any unsportsmanlike fouls.
Eddie Vedder, we were the better man.
We were the better man. We came out on top 3-1. A huge win, though, not only for their Sun Belt Conference, rankings, huge for their chance to make the NCAA tournament. RPI ratings were released last week. James Madison was in the top 48 teams. South Carolina maybe on the outside looking in just barely, but a huge win that really sets up the rest of their season.
Yeah, and if we kind of go back to that graphic, you'll see the rest of their schedule right now. It's setting up nicely. They kind of got through the meat of Sun Belt play. Right now, they're taking on Old Dominion. Spencer is getting a score update for me.
We are, and would you believe it if South Carolina had just scored in the 16th minute when I opened my phone?
Absolute stunner there in Virginia Beach. But then they go on the road to Central Florida, who's in the same area of South Carolina in terms of those RPI ratings, looking for the NCAA tournament bid. There's only 48 teams that make the tournament. There's only 25 at-large spots. So you're really trying to be one of those top 40 teams in the RPI.
Or win the conference tournament.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, there's only one thing left to do, win the whole thing.
Yep.
But it's really been getting a lot better for South Carolina. You can really see that they're starting to turn this program around.
And that game against James Madison, they were really good offensively. Defensively, they held super strong amidst a ton of James Madison pressure towards the end of the game when they really needed a goal. Their best complete performance we've seen, without a doubt. I mean, the team really put it together. Got to give Coach Annan a ton of credit because even if you look at every year of his tenure, the team has made strides and they're getting better every year, and that's really all you can ask. That's the start of building a program. And a good thing about South Carolina, no matter how this season ends, they have a lot of young talent.
Yeah.
And that's, we've seen a lot of freshmen, specifically Alejandro Velasquez-Lopez, be some of the best in the nation, and they're really guys you can build around.
Absolutely, and I'm really excited to see kind of how this season ends for South Carolina, but hopefully not too soon. But speaking of seasons ending, the NBA season began last week. Me and Spencer jotted down some of our biggest surprises and letdowns of the season, and we'll start with mine. The Memphis Grizzlies, despite still being very injured, no Jaren Jackson Jr., and I think Desmond Bane is hurt as well, they're looking very good. John Morant is back, and they just have some great depth. They draft so well. And then also the Atlanta Hawks looking a lot better. Dyson Daniels, very good for them.
What a pickup.
Hey, Alex Sarr didn't want to play for him, so be it. Trae Young remains one of the best point guards in the league. And then, Spencer, what are your surprises?
So my surprises so far have been the Lakers' red-hot start. They're 3-0. AD in those first two games putting up over 30 and 15, I believe, in both of them. If not 30 and 10, I know for sure. He looks unstoppable, and I think you got to give new coach, J.J. Redick, a lot of credit.
Yeah,
he's using
what a sentence.
He's using Anthony Davis kind of like a Jokic-like hub for the offense. If everything flows around him, it's really smart. You've got one of the best passers the game's ever seen in LeBron James, so it's a great system that's off to a good start. They had a come-from-behind win against the Kings, and I don't know how we expected it to go, but I don't know if you'd expected them to look this good and this different under the new regime so quickly. Also, the Cleveland Cavaliers, although they haven't faced the toughest competitions, they've kind of dominated in their first three games. Donovan Mitchell looks really good, and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are really, a force to be reckoned with inside the paint. Those are my surprises. JP, will you tell us about your letdown so far? And
the organization that is the Los Angeles Clippers. It's a great new arena, I guess. I like the fan section you did there. But
I like their broadcaster on TikTok. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, but the handling of the Kawhi Leonard injury, sending Paul George to Philadelphia for nothing, it's bizarre. It is truly, nothing they do makes sense in terms of actual basketball moves.
Well, back to
signing
the
a bunch of horrible people to play for you who aren't even good, like Josh Primo.
Yeah. Yep. But also, back to the Kawhi thing real quick. A doctor just left the team and is suing them for possible, unlawful treatments to Kawhi Leonard.
Good.
And, good if they did it, that would be horrible. But you're talking about this organization, and you hear that this might be a thing. You're ruining one of the coolest and most fun players in the NBA's career for, just mishandling him. That's frankly not only a letdown, that's depressing and probably could be criminally prosecuted if that's true. So.
And then my other one is, the Toronto Raptors, very proud organization, but they've been slipping in recent years. Now, R.J. Barrett, they kind of did this not really a rebuild, but they tried to retool around young players and trades. Scotty Barnes has been,
up and down.
Sure. Emmanuel Quickley has had a tough start to the year, his first full season as a starting point guard, and R.J. Barrett's been hurt. So it's just tough to see for them.
Yeah, my letdowns, the Nuggets have fallen, man. Jokic is unbelievable still.
Millions must miss shots.
He was incredible. But if you look at just the way the roster's constructed, Russell Westbrook cannot shoot threes. Michael Porter Jr. can shoot threes, but him and Jokic, I think, are the only two in the entire roster that can. And when you do that, you're just asking for everybody to collapse around your best player. He has no one to kick it out to. You look at the loss that is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you wouldn't think it would mean that much. Why they did not try to go after him is crazy.
Was Smith the glue that held the Nuggets franchise together? My column.
I think you got to look into it. But it's just, what are they doing? Because you're wasting a great talent and surrounding him by people who just can't do anything outside the paint. And remind you, he's a center. Of course he's going to be in the paint. So you've got just like 5 guys trying to shoot layups, and you're seeing how that's going. But again, another letdown of mine, the 76ers are 0-2, and they have injury concerns, but you already have one of the most injured stars in the game in Joel Embiid, and then you're like, let's trade for another one. Give me Paul George. And neither one have seen the court to start the year. And you just wonder.
Tyrese Maxey has been horrible. He's leaving stains on the floor, Spencer.
Well, he's playing good right now as we speak against the Pacers. But
the Pacers are another team that has been...
we talked about them for our letdowns. They got 30-pieced in New York the other night. And Halliburton was held scoreless. The NBA's off to a weird start, but we're glad it's here. But before we finish talking about them, let's talk about our favorite team, the Hornets. They're 1-2 to start the year, but they're missing, I would say, 2 of their 3 or 4 best players. And it's very evident. LaMelo Ball has gotten off to a red-hot start. He looks awesome, but this team needs Brandon Miller, and it needs Mark Williams fast, because I don't know how much more Nick Richards I can watch.
Well, he's a great backup center that should never even entertain the idea of starting games. But Trey Mann, Grant Williams, Seth Curry have been phenomenal supporting pieces. But they're struggling to fill in the gaps left by the injuries to Brandon Miller and Mark Williams. And if they can really get those guys back, they really have a shot, because the bottom of the East is so bad. And Charles Lee has already kind of turned around LaMelo in terms of defending.
Just need to get the turnovers under control, I think. Charlotte has not had a great start of the year in that regard.
Yeah, because we don't have a backup point guard.
He had 10 turnovers against the Hawks.
Vasily Mitchell just can't play anymore.
He doesn't look quick enough.
No.
Or physical enough. So, again, I think the Hornets have a ton of potential. I just think you need your guys to come back healthy. And, really, they've been in the 2 games they've lost down to the final 2 minutes.
Against good teams.
The Hawks, again, you talked about, are really good. The Heat, notoriously a good organization. So we'll see what comes of the NBA, and, of course, we'll talk about it probably a lot more the rest of the way. But it's not the only pro sport we're going to talk about, because the MLB World Series is underway, and the Dodgers already have a 2-0 lead over the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
It's been a heartbreaking way to lose in both games, again, as Freddie Freeman, with one of the biggest World Series moments ever, I think, the only walk-off Grand Slam in history. It was an awesome moment. It definitely stinks, because I want the Yankees to win.
Yeah, Aaron Judge has just been horrific. There's really no other way to say it. Yeah. Bringing in a guy who hasn't pitched in over a month to face, the heart of the Dodgers lineup, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman.
Well, you walk Mookie Betts before Nestor Cortez throws him a pitch.
When Cortez has over the course of his career, kind of owned Mookie. So it's interesting there.
Or why don't if you want a lefty-lefty matchup, which is what they got. You have Tim Hill just sitting there, and if you look at what Tim Hill did last night, Tim Hill looked awesome. Certainly questionable.
And then in game 2, Rodon gives up the long ball again.
3 of them. Yep.
When you're not getting anything out of Aaron Judge, it's going to be hard to win.
Well, and it's not just Aaron Judge you can blame. Sorry to cut you off. I mean, he's been bad, but
there's no way the Yankees win a World Series when he doesn't play well.
I think there's no denying that. And John Smoltz gave some really great analysis to it. If you look at every off speed that they throw Aaron Judge, you can always tell by the way his hips are. If his hips are already turned way too early for the pitch, there's no chance he's going to hit it. And I mean, it seemed like every at bat they just got him to chase on like 3 sliders outside the zone. And he struck out 6 times in his 9 at-bats through 2 games. It's going to be hard to win. If not, move him down in the lineup. You don't have to keep him in 3 because he's a star player. Every star goes through slumps.
Notoriously, in 1996, the last time the Yankees fell down 2-0 in a World Series, Joe Torre blew up the lineup, benching guys like Bernie Williams and Paul O'Neill and Tino Martinez for some younger guys, lowering people in the lineup. And
what happened in that one, JP?
They came back. The Yankees ripped off 4 straight victories to win their first World Series in forever. We'll see what they can do there. But Game 3 starts tomorrow.
It's Bueller Schmidt on the bump.
The Fall Classic back in New York for the first time. We'll see if the Yankees have some life yet in them. And they won't go down without a fight, at least from Giancarlo Stanton, Juan Soto, and Anthony Volpe has been great as well. But that's all we've got for you today. We'll be right back after this break with this week's edition of Pick'ems to wrap up this episode of Ball Don't Lie. Welcome back to, sorry, my tie was messed up. Welcome back to Ball Don't Lie Pick'ems. An undefeated week in college football skyrocketed my record to 31-19, but Spencer is still on top, and I think we didn't do Pick'ems last week. This is just leftover
is this the old record?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
It doesn't matter. We didn't even do a show last week. Anyway, let's roll through the games that we have.
Oh wait,
here.
hold on. We do have, for some reason, the prompt. Okay, the Pick'em section has not updated on our prompter. We're going off paper for you guys.
All
JP
right, hang on.
is 34-26. I'm 39-21. A big week for the kid.
Wow. Oh, God.
JP, will you start us off with the NFL Pick'ems for tonight, my good friend?
We have a great helmet matchup, but it's the 49ers and the Cowboys, 2 teams that have been kind of bad this year.
And extremely injured.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Don't watch this one.
Don't watch this one. Spencer, who you got?
Yeah, we will be watching the Penguin. I'm going to go with the Cowboys because they're less injured.
I guess.
Micah Parsons isn't playing, but for the 49ers, you might be missing Debo. We still don't know. McCaffrey's out. Ayuk's out. You might be without Jawan Jennings. I actually don't know who their wide receiver 1 would be if Debo Samuel doesn't play.
Me.
JP's getting on a plane after this.
But for me, the Cowboys' defense is just too bad. I'm going to pick the 49ers. Then the worst Monday Night Football game maybe in the history of football happens as the New York Football Giants, helmed by an actual anti-American agent, Daniel Jones, takes on Russell Wilson and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mr. Unlimited.
Jesus. This sucks. Who's going to watch this? Not me. I'm picking the Steelers.
I'm also going to go with the Steelers. But actually, someone should investigate who's in charge of making primetime games because
the Jets, the Giants, the Steelers, they're everywhere. The Cowboys.
And they just stranded the Jaguars in London every year.
What is happening?
They just want them to move there. Just go for it. Moving on to college football, where again much cooler, but again, not a great slate. But you know what? It doesn't matter about the numbers beside them. It's what happens on the field. Starting with our headlining matchup, Penn State hosts Ohio State. Who you got, JP?
I think this one's really going to come down. Can Drew Aller play, and can Drew Aller play well against the top team?
Can Drew Aller play football?
We've never seen it happen. And as much as Ohio State has struggled, I think I will still, kind of go with what I know rather than what I don't. And I think Ohio State wins. It's probably going to be an awful football game, but I think Ohio State slugs it out.
I really went with my heart in all of these picks, and I don't know why. I wasn't even thinking about it. I don't know if that's why I have a better record this year or what's going on. I'm going with Penn State, man. Ohio State looked horrible. I think if Penn State's able to shut down Ohio State's run game again, I mean, you maybe force Will Howard to make some mistakes. The Penn State defense is really great. It's going to be ugly offensively, I think, on both sides of the ball. But that's Big Ten football. So
Yeah.
I'm taking the Nittany Lions. Moving on to an ACC headliner, it's number 20 SMU hosting number 18 Pitt. Who you got?
This one I went back and forth on a lot. I like both these teams a lot. They're very fun. But I think Pitt just kind of has the ability to score touchdowns in the red zone and not turn the ball over. I love their backfield. They spread the ball around a lot. And for SMU, they don't really have a go-to guy on offense outside of their running back. But their leading receiver is a tight end. And I think that Pat Narduzzi's defense is going to feast on that.
Yeah, I'm going to take SMU at home. I like Kevin Jennings a lot. I think they're going to have to use him in a dual threat manner, get him and the rest of that run game going. And if they're able to do that, I think they'll keep it close and eventually come out on top of Pitt. But I expect this one to actually be one of the best games of the week. I think it's going to be really fun. Moving on to the game happening right here in Columbia, South Carolina hosts number 10, Texas A&M. Who you got in this one, JP? This one could be fun.
Well, it comes down, how does Texas A&M handle what South Carolina does defensively?
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I don't think they're going to handle it very well. Go Cox, baby. Hey, I'm picking South Carolina Gamecocks.
Hey, guess what? The lights are not only too bright, they're bright red, baby. We're coming for blood. Texas A&M. I mean, we're getting our second ever win against the Aggies this weekend.
Truth.
This defensive
Truth.
unit is going to cement itself with another excellent performance this week at
Dylan
Williams-Brice.
Stewart will do a legal celebration of these sacks.
He
on
might.
Marcel Reed.
He might. Let's hope not, because that would probably cost us a penalty. But it would be pretty funny. Moving on to the other South Carolina mainstay team, Clemson versus Louisville. JP.
Clemson has looked very good offensively. While they haven't played the greatest of competition, I still think their offense is just too good against Louisville's porous defense. I think it's a good game, but I think Clemson scores a couple touchdowns late and Louisville can't answer.
Yeah, remember when I said I was picking with my heart? I'm not going to pick Clemson. Go Louisville, man. I mean, I think the Cards get it done. L1C4, as JP has once taught me, it does look like we're throwing up a gun. I promise. It's a Louisville thing, apparently, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
L's
I was
up,
doing
baby.
that right. But yeah, go Cards, I think. As Arkansas plays Ole Miss in another just stinker of an SEC matchup.
Taylor Green, go Burr. I think the Hogs win. And Sam Pittman saves his job. I think the Tennessee win went a long way, but I think beating Lane Kiffin, kind of cementing this as a lost season for the Rebs, will get him at least another year in Fayetteville.
I do agree with you. I think Arkansas is going to get this done. Just watching Ole Miss, they're uninspired. They don't look good. Their defense, I guess, is all right, but I don't know, man. They're just not a fun team. I'm going with
stink, and I hate them, frankly.
what he said. Miami versus Duke. I don't know if it's the last time we saw him, but remember that funny kickoff return from a couple years?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it really should have been down or whatever.
It should have been, and there's people on the field.
But Manny Diaz versus his old squad, he used to coach there. I like Duke. I think he's doing good things there. Miami's just a little too much.
I think they're going to be too much. Cam Ward and co. This offense it's really good. I don't want to say
not so
unstoppable.
much.
Yeah, I think Duke can hang around.
It's not bad enough to where Duke can reasonably win the football game.
Yeah, unless Miami commits a ton of turnovers. I don't see this one being particularly too close. Michigan versus number 1 Oregon at the Big House. I'm taking the Ducks in this one. We will never pick Michigan.
Go Ducks.
Yep.
Quack, 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 quack.
I mean, can you argue with that? No. Georgia, Florida, again, another heated rivalry. I'm going with the Dogs in this one. What about you, my friend?
I would love to pick Florida. This is one of my favorite rivalries growing up because they would both wear their home jerseys and it would look very pretty.
Mark Richt, the Gator Stomp.
Mark Richt against Urban Meyer. Mark Richt against what's his name? Will Muschamp. I don't know how that escaped my mind. I mean, these were classic matchups. Not so much anymore. I think Florida plays them close, a lot like how Auburn played.
I think you're right.
Georgia close. But I think Georgia pulls away in the end.
I think so, too. And moving on to the Fall Classic we've talked so much about. Dodgers up 2-0 versus the Yankees. JP, will you tell me a little bit about what you're thinking?
Start spreading the news.
I guess we're seeing it every single episode.
Breathe in today. I think the Yankees come back. I mean, it's the magic of the Bronx with the Fall Classic. Fox, big-time players, big-time games. I think Aaron Judge bounces back. Giancarlo Stanton, Juan Soto, I'm just starting to name. Edgar Martinez, Jorge Posada.
Mark Teixeira.
Mark
That guy was
Teixeira.
awesome.
Hideki Matsui, come on!
He's going with the Yankees, if you couldn't tell.
Derek Jeter.
Again,
Robinson Cano.
I think this game will come down to Game 3. I think the Yankees have to flip it. You have to flip the script. There's a
dominating
Gamecock
fashion.
on the mound. Clark Schmidt gets it done for the boys in Columbia and the boys in the Bronx. And the Yankees, it feels like 96, almost 30 years later. They rip off 4 straight. They win it in 6, going on the road to just rip the heart out of L.A. It's going to happen. It's going to be beautiful because Juan Soto is hitting like the best player in baseball. If his team can follow suit, the Yankees get it done. And JP,
Randy
for me
Johnson
and you,
pitched for the Yankees.
For me and you, this is a family affair.
It is a family affair. My dad would be happy, and that would make me happy.
And my grandpa's watching down, best
make
seat
Derek
in the
Jeter
house,
happy.
baby. You know what I'm saying? We've got to do it. We've got to pick the Yankees, otherwise I'd be kicked out of my own family.
Yankees.
Yeah.
Dude,
JP,
Masahiro Tanaka.
come on, man. And that's going to do it for this episode of Ball Don't Lie. Go
Yeah.
Yankees. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. For SGTV, I'm JP Barry.
Hey, you know, before I say my name, Ball Don't Lie is going to an awards ceremony here this week. We'd be fools
we
not
aren't,
to mention it.
but
We're not going, but
we
our beautiful content has been nominated for Best Video Sportscast. We'll keep you up to date with the results, of course, because if we win an award or something silly, we'll have to add it to an intro or, you know, we'll be award-winning Ball Don't Lie. But either way, just thank you for watching because, you know, hey, we wouldn't be here without you. So I'm Spencer Ball. And from all of us here at SGTV, have a great week, Carolina.
Forever to thee. I'm gonna make New York, New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you.